If you're ready to unlock more better days, to take control of your health, to push past your limits and unleash your full potential, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Bettle. For over 2 decades, I've worked with elite athletes and high performers, helping them optimize their bodies, strengthen their minds, and recover from setbacks. Now I'm bringing that expertise to you through the Vitality Collective podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the science, strategies, and real-world solutions you can apply right away. Whether it's enhancing your physical performance, avoiding or recovering from injury, sharpening your mental edge, or simply feeling your best every single day. With insights from top experts and thought leaders, this podcast is designed to help you take action, feel better, and live the life that you deserve. Welcome to the Vitality Collective podcast, where every day is vital. If you've spent any time online lately, you'll have seen the debate. Go keto. Load up on carbs. Pick a side. The problem is that framing's just wrong, and today's conversation explains why. Dr. Mike T. Nelson is back, and we're getting into metabolic flexibility. What it actually means, how you know if yours is compromised, and what to do about it. We cover the role of sleep, stress, exercise, and nutrition, and we get into some of the specific mechanisms that most of these online conversations completely skip over. If you've ever wondered why your energy crashes in the afternoon, or why your body composition stays stuck despite the effort you're putting in, or why every piece of diet advice you see seems to contradict the last one, this is the episode. Let's get into it. Dr. Mike T. Nelson, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back. I appreciate it.
We really appreciate your time. Dr. Mike, we are seeing more and more online about metabolic flexibility. But many won't actually know what that means. And so let's start simple. When we say metabolic flexibility, what are we talking about?
Yeah, as you know, the fitness world is rife with people that are like, oh, it's just we went through the high-fat keto phase, which is kind of sort of coming back again for round 2 or 3, where
right.
You don't need carbohydrates. They're non-essential. They're not useful. Just use fat. You'll be fine. And then we're actually seeing, especially with more high-level endurance athletes, like super high amounts of, like crazy amounts of carbohydrates I've heard reported from some of the Scandinavia coaches and triathlons and things like that. And there's a whole high carb side where you just need carbohydrates. Don't worry about fat. And the reality is that your body uses, shocker, both of them.
Right.
So metabolic flexibility is kind of on your right end of the spectrum, how well you can use carbohydrates. Kind of on your left end of the spectrum, how well can you use fat? And the third component is just simply how fast can you switch back and forth between the two. So the reality is both are useful. A lot of it depends on context. And then switching when you need to and as appropriate is the third component that's also useful.
I find that really interesting, the camps online, with the extremes. Because so often those camps are also talking about extreme populations.
Oh, for sure.
Right? We're looking at super high carbs from Norwegian endurance coaches. And then you and me listening online, who may not have that background or are not operating at that level.
Yeah, those are the elite of the elite.
These are the elite.
Yeah.
And so I should do that.
Yeah.
it's really interesting, like where people are sourcing their information and how they're finding it to be useful to apply into this general population world.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest issue is not nobody, but very few people online want to talk about context because you can't fit that in a 10-second blurb or things like that, which even on Instagram, I've been playing around with a lot more carousels just because I feel like it gives me a little bit more opportunity to try to break something down a little bit more. And that's my first question. So if people come to me and they're like, hey, I want to, get a PR time in my marathon, which I do have some endurance clients, and they may have heard a high carb approach. They may have heard a high fat approach. But my first question is like, what are your relative times and what have you done before?
Right.
If you're someone like I've had clients in the past who have some problems using carbohydrates. Body comp maybe not really ideal. Their times are not super fast, so they're not looking to break a 2-hour marathon or anything
Right.
like that. They're not close to it. We have used more of almost a literally ketogenic, high-fat diet approach because they don't need absolute speed and power. It's easier from a fueling standpoint. We had plenty of time to train them. Conversely, I've had people the opposite approach. They've done some of the more ketogenic approach, but then the weekends they kind of go non-keto, and then they're back to trying to be keto Monday through Friday, and they're stuck in this no man's land where
Yeah.
I'm like, let's pick a side, and if you're really trying to hammer performance, yeah, we're probably going to push a little bit more carbohydrates. We're going to do it in a tested manner.
Yeah.
We might even use CGMs or things like that, continuous glucose monitors. And the reality is both can work. I mean, even for an athlete with almost the same level of performance, like I've used probably opposite approaches. But again, that's individualized to the person, where they're at, what they're trying to do, what's worked for them, what's not worked for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes it very confusing because everybody wants the simple solution, the silver bullet, the thing that's going to solve all of their issues. And
Right.
there are things that definitely help. There are things that move the needle. There are definitely leverage points for sure. But rarely is it ever just one single factor that
Right.
solved everything for them and now they're good for the rest of their life.
Right. And so let's talk about this in terms of like my day-to-day life,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I'm somebody that's heard this, like how would I recognize in my day-to-day life, like what would I notice about myself if I was lacking this? Like what symptoms would appear, or if I did have a lot of metabolic flexibility?
What I noticed when your metabolic flexibility is better, you can handle periods of time with not eating and then consequently eating usually more on the carbohydrate spectrum and then feeling okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast and want to take a nap under your desk for 2 hours afterwards, you might have some carbohydrate issues. Or you're like, oh my God, I missed breakfast. I don't know if I make it to lunch.
Yeah.
Right. Like you may have some issues using fat. Though the two rough field tests that I use, like if you have no technology, we're not even going to prick your finger. We're not looking at anything at all. For fat use on that end of the spectrum, how long could you fast? Like, yeah, by all means, have some electrolytes, have some water. Like, you don't need to do anything like crazy like that. Ideally, if you could make it, 19, 20 hours, I think you're probably pretty good on that spectrum. Like, you should be able to do your normal day. Yeah, you're probably going to be a little bit hungry, but you shouldn't feel like you need to take a nap for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Training
Mm-hmm.
should be relatively decent. And then on the carbohydrate end, I have what I call the 2 Pop-Tart test. So if you had 2 Pop-Tarts for breakfast, do you feel okay, a couple hours afterwards? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to take a nap under your desk? You probably not so good. And again, I'll start to hate mail about, oh, you're telling me to eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast. And it's like, no, I'm just trying to pick something that they're literally almost everywhere in the world now. They're almost the same amount of carbohydrates as a oral glucose tolerance test. And I think if you're pretty good on both of those, I would say you're probably okay. Now, again, I've tested some people on that using, finger pricks and blood work and metabolic carts and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't have any technology at all, I think those two kind of bookends you can do on your own are pretty good starting points.
Yeah. It's really interesting, when you're in pro sport, you have every man and his dog giving your athletes advice.
Oh yeah.
Right. And typically they gravitate towards whatever like the craziest thing somebody can sell them. The athlete thinks like, this is the special thing that's going to work for me. And a couple of our athletes in hockey, highly glycolytic sport, were being told to just load up on avocado pregame.
What?
Like,
oh no, it's
up.
back again.
And I'm like, I don't think this is the right timing for that. But that's what they wanted to do. And these guys, man, they were really struggling endurance wise. Like they were really dropping off at the end of the game.
Shocker.
Sluggish, and right. Because this sport that happens in basically 30-second to 1 minute windows with about a 2 to 4 to 1 work to rest ratio, it's a carbohydrate driven sport. All right.
Yeah. You're probably not even in elite levels, what I've seen, you're probably not even spinning that much lactate. Like lower
Right.
levels, yes, but elite levels, no. Like you're just burning through piss tons of carbohydrates.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. So I think that was really interesting to hear you explain it like that, because it feeds right back to those days when it's like, this is a very specialized sport that has a very specialized fuel source, and you're highly adapted to that. Is that something that you see, that when people are training for a certain thing, like I've been historically a strength and power guy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So circuit style lifting, anaerobic interval work, like a lot of sprint work on either treadmill or bike, and then recently shifted over to do a lot more aerobic work. Have you seen a sort of preference or a skewing of the fuel preference based on people's training?
Definitely. And the big caveat is it depends also on their outside stress level. And I think that's the hard part. So I have seen data from high level elite half marathon runner who won a metabolic cart, literally did not have a crossover period. Meaning at any part on a max test, we need to start out very low for the listeners. We've got the little mask on. We're looking at all the air in and out. And it's a way of telling basically fat use and carbohydrate use. And so as you start low, it should be mostly fat. And as you gear all the way up, it should be mostly carbohydrates at the end. I don't think he ever went before an RER of 0.85, meaning
Which
at
means
no
what?
point during the entire test was he even at the 50% of fat, 50% carbohydrate mark. Now, if you talk to him historically, what was his biggest issue? If he hit all his fueling stations and didn't have any GI distress or nothing else, everything, went right, he got, amazing times. But if he had a little GI upset or missed a training station or fueling station, the race just was pretty horrible, and for his standards. I've seen other people on the other end where they don't have much of any carbohydrate use at the end. These are usually ketogenic type people. The caveat to all of that is I've seen non-elite athletes, but people who are pretty metabolically buggered up, like sitting across from me, like spinning 3 millimolar of lactate at rest.
Okay,
right?
so
Just
that's super
running
interesting.
tons of carbohydrates
Yeah,
through their system, not during exercise, like at rest.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
their body is trying to solve the problem of, I have this huge amount of baseline stress. What is the main fuel system for that? It's going to be carbohydrates. And if you run through at a fast enough rate, you're going to spin out my air quotes lactic acid, which is actually just lactate and hydrogen
Right.
ions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you poke their finger into a lactate test, you're looking at lactate, but you're using it as a surrogate marker for hydrogen ions. So I think stress is the big thing. I've seen that a little bit in a few CrossFit athletes too. But in the CrossFit athletes who were mostly using carbohydrates, almost all of them were super stressed. HRV scores were crap, respiration rates goofy. And I've seen some other data from even those high glycolytic sports where they're completely fine. Like their low end is still
Mm-hmm.
intact, like they can still use fat pretty well, and their high end is still intact,
Right.
which is more what you want, right? If you're looking at health as also one of the parameters. And so
Right.
the key then is, okay, if someone's really only using carbohydrates, and let's say they're a hockey player, that might be fine for their sport. Like the refueling isn't probably too much of an issue with the short shifts and stuff like that, unless they have GI issues or some other issues. But I might explain to them that, for your longevity, like we may want to work on this low end during the off season. For
Yeah.
God's sakes, we're not going to do it when you're playing competitively. And if you do it in an intelligent manner, you can restore that low end without screwing up the high end. And I think that's what gets missed, is people think I either have to pick one or the other.
Correct.
And yeah, you do need to specialize to some degree, but I found that you can get a huge range in most people most of the time.
Yeah, I think, certainly when I was starting out, there was the real belief that you couldn't train concurrently.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
You'd basically like destroy one. There was just no developing like one if you develop the other.
Right.
And I think we've really seen that both are possible. And I'd like to touch on that general health piece, because it is something that's neglected in athletes.
Yes.
Right? All the way from their blood work comes back. They've got cholesterol through the roof, triglycerides like going crazy. And everybody's like, they're an athlete. They're young. They're fine.
Yeah.
So that sort of gets
might be
dismissed in
fine
the
for
athlete.
now.
Exactly. But in the general population as well, as we talk about elite athletes, a lot of people maybe don't identify with that. They say, okay, well, what does this mean for me? Right. And so I think that's where this health conversation comes in, because really in the Western world, we're starting to get into a metabolic health crisis. Right. We're really seeing that proliferating in, through the obesity epidemic, but then also I think the underlying mechanisms and what's going on inside the body that you can't necessarily feel. Talk to me a little bit about this concept for that group and for your general health.
Yeah, there's pretty good data. I would say it's not as strong in humans as it is in mice, but there is a fair amount of human data showing that if we pick one marker, like how well you can use fat as a fuel, is a pretty good marker for health. Like, again, we've got a little bit more data on, cardiorespiratory fitness and VO2 max and grip strength and lower body muscle mass. Like, those are probably the top 3. And we've got really good studies on all of those. But we see that people over time tend to get pushed more to the carbohydrate end of the spectrum. That could be from food choices, stress, everything else. So it definitely is deteriorating. So the simplest example is just looking at, type 2 diabetics, right? Because that's a huge issue, huge metabolic issue, probably the number one metabolic issue, at least in the US. And if you think about that through the window of metabolic flexibility, everybody tends to think that it's just a carbohydrate disease. And yes, do you have problems with carbohydrates if you're type 2 diabetic? You 100% do. But the body's solution to that then is, well, I can't really get these carbohydrates to go where I want them to go. So they're kind of, air quote, backing up a little bit in the bloodstream. So blood glucose starts to elevate. So the body's solution then is to put out more insulin. If I put out more insulin, insulin is a signal to get things out of the bloodstream, like, shove it in tissue. I don't really care where it goes per se, but just get it the hell out of the bloodstream, because chronically high glucose is not very good. And everything is just aired more towards, we'll do everything possible not to go too low. Because if you go too low in blood glucose, you're dead. So everything is kind of pushed to this higher end. So over time, if you measure insulin levels or you see peptide or whatever marker you're using, you see that these insulin levels go up higher and higher and higher over time. The issue with that is that insulin is also the fuel selector switch, which I stole that from Jeff Volek, that high levels of insulin push your body metabolically to actually use carbohydrates.
Right.
Low levels of insulin actually push your body to use more fat as a fuel. So if you're progressing down the spectrum of type 2 diabetes, your baseline insulin levels over time keep going up and up. What happens then is that you're literally not able to downregulate and use fat as well as a fuel.
Right.
So you're literally becoming metabolically inflexible. You can't, upregulate all the way to use carbohydrates. You can't downregulate all the way to use fat. And if you look at kind of a lot of the data, unfortunately in the US, like that's exactly the picture that I see, because that's my bias. But a lot of times it's just been as, oh, well, it's just a carbohydrate issue. And then now we have some other data showing that it's a fat issue. And the reality is it's kind of both. It's both ends of the spectrum that are getting hit.
Yeah. And I think that what I'd like to pull out of that is you mentioned type 2 diabetics, but I want people to understand that is on a spectrum.
Yes.
Yes, we have a classification of you are pre-diabetic and type 2 diabetic, but there's a whole journey you can go along of gradually decreasing health and metabolic health before you get there. You're on that path, and it's just a spectrum.
Yep.
So one of the canary in the coal mine here is that we see normal blood glucose, but we start to see elevated insulin. So long before you're classified, and most blood tests that you go for won't actually be measuring insulin.
Correct.
So it'll just be, okay, yep, blood glucose is normal. And so it's not until we see that following along, when the insulin now can't keep up, that we actually start to see you get classified as having one of these diseases. But it started 10 years ago.
Yeah. And that's the hardest part. Like, even people getting blood work, they have to keep in mind that they're only seeing a snapshot at that
Mm-hmm.
particular point in time. And so my third study I did for my PhD, I got farmed out to the epidemiologic department because I needed another study. Long
Right.
story short, I did one on FMD, flow meter dilation, that I couldn't publish because I just unfortunately got the extreme ends of the population. So with a sample size
Right.
of 18, my standard deviation was just too high. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so a year and a half ago over there, and they were looking at exercise testing on people who were borderline type 2 diabetics. And they were looking at exercise as an intervention, but they had blood draws of insulin and glucose multiple time points during exercise. And so the glucose data, as you know, comes back pretty fast. The insulin data, we had to wait for it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at all the glucose data and I'm like, oh, this person's semi-okay. Oh, this person's effed. This person,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. And so I had all my little predictions, and I get the insulin data back. I was like, oh, some of the people who were, high, like in US rating, 110, 120, technically not diabetic yet, but not normal, their insulin levels were, okay. They were high, but
Yeah.
not crazy. There was two other people in the study who were right around 125, and their insulin levels were sky high.
Really?
Meaning that even at the same blood glucose level, and again, we don't know the background of these people or anything like that, I would argue that with the high levels of insulin, that person is much farther into the
Right.
progression of type 2 diabetes, right?
Right.
Because the body is already compensating to a high level and it says, hey, I can solve this glucose problem, but screw it, I'll just put out more
Yeah.
insulin, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're only looking at blood glucose, it's a good marker, it's a good start. But without any marker of insulin or C-peptide or any markers there, you're not seeing the other part of the story. You're not seeing some of those compensations that may
Yeah.
have already taken place. If I see blood work
Yeah.
on someone where their glucose is a little bit elevated, their A1C is a little bit high, their glycomark's kind of funky, and their insulin and C-peptide are really high, I'm like, oh crap, like this is a bigger issue than someone where those insulin and C-peptide are actually pretty low.
Yeah, because what that means is you have elevated glucose and your pancreas, your body is fighting for its life to keep it there. It's not now able to stem that tide and keep it at a normal level, even though you're dumping insulin out into the system. And this is where insulin resistance is starting to build up, right?
Yep, because then the muscle and all your cells are like, I equate it to like, if there's someone knocking at my door, like, and I'm upstairs and I don't hear them, like, what are they going to do? They're just going to keep knocking louder and louder until I hopefully answer the door. Right. So the muscle cell is like, insulin, whatever. But if the body puts out enough insulin, it's like, oh, okay. Like you're really hammering on the door. Okay, I'll open it now. I'll let substrate into the muscle. But you want the opposite. You want to be very sensitive, so you don't have to use as much insulin. You can just kind of do a quiet knock once or twice, and everything's cool then, right?
Yeah,
for the same response.
Well, yeah, and the other thing that's important here is that that's happening in the brain as well.
For sure, it's happening in all tissues.
Your neurons aren't. Your brain isn't able to uptake fuel, and the brain is an energy intensive organ, like
super energy intensive
24/7. Right? Yeah. So okay, that's fascinating then, and I think rather than going down the path of scaring people half to death about this, what can we do then? Right? What builds metabolic flexibility?
The good part is that, I mean, it's even been argued that, type 2 diabetics is kind of sort of a lifestyle choice. Yeah, we can, on the psychology side, debate how much of that is true or not. But from the pure physiology side, we definitely have a very good understanding of, what is affected by it. So the standard things people have heard, get better sleep, exercise, eat better, all that stuff definitely helps via different mechanisms. So when we're doing exercise, for example, so if we look at the mechanisms to pull substrates, like even fats and glucose out of the bloodstream, in general, you have what's called insulin-mediated and non-insulin-mediated. So insulin-mediated is the one that people normally hear of. I eat 2 Pop-Tarts, insulin levels go up, the body says, insulin goes over to the muscle, your glutes, GLUT4, translocation, all that kind of stuff. Your little receptor goes to the outside and it pulls substrates in. What people also forget is that a lot of it is non-insulin mediated uptake, which literally means that just contracting muscle can pull substrates directly out of the bloodstream,
Right.
which is why you see advice like just get more movement, even doing a walk, take a walk after meals, walk in the morning, right? Because walking is simply a fair amount of muscle contraction, albeit at a low level. And that's another mechanism to not have these, fats and carbohydrates, glucose kind of back up in the bloodstream. We know that long-term lifting weights is super helpful. There's some fascinating studies looking at, I think it might have even been type 2 diabetics. I'd have to review the study to make sure. Giving them a huge amount of glucose immediately after a very intense weight training session, full body session. And their glucose insulin dynamics were almost normal.
Wow.
Right. So it can almost, again, depending on what stage of diabetic you're at and all that kind of stuff. But it has a massive effect at normalizing that. Because what are you doing? You're doing a high amount of muscle contraction under a fair amount of load.
Yeah.
And long term, you're actually adding potentially more muscle and strength. So not only are you just using the sink, right? So you're kind of pulling the plug on the tub of letting things out, but now you're actually making the drain a little bit bigger. You're creating a bigger sink to dispose of these nutrients and to put them somewhere. You could make an argument that I think fasting is a pretty good intervention. Again, you're going to decrease a fair amount of calories. I don't think fasting is magical or anything like that, like a lot of people claim. But the other advantage it has is that you are going to lower insulin levels over time. A really cool study, I think it was from 2010, where they looked at a 24 and a 48-hour fast in sedentary versus overweight individuals. And what was the takeaway where they found was that the overweight individuals still responded to a fast as well as the lean people did. Now, their dynamics when the fed state, when you give them like some food, completely different, right? Basically, the overweight people were not very metabolically flexible. So you could make an argument that fasting might be a good stimulus because you're pulling out a whole bunch of calories. So odds are you're going to be low in calories, which definitely makes a huge difference. And you're also lowering levels of insulin, pushing the body to use a little bit more fat as a fuel. The other one I would add is sleep. There's really cool studies on sleep in metabolic chambers, and it basically whacks carbohydrate use and whacks fat use. So the study is from, I think it's the University of Chicago, where they took college people. They normally slept 8 hours. They had them sleep, I think, 4 hours for 5 nights, and basically made them borderline type 2 diabetics in like a week. It did reverse, right? So they let them sleep. They went back to normal, which is great. An old study, 2011, I think, they took people, had them sleep 8 hours. And then the other time, same person, they did what they fractured their sleep. So they had an alarm clock they had to hit once every hour. So they didn't have to get out of bed. They didn't have to do anything else. They just woke up, hit the buzzer, okay, back to sleep. In the time when they fractured their sleep, they cut their use of fat by about 30 or 40%.
Wow, interesting.
Probably because, again, they have stress. They have this interruption of you're becoming more sympathetic. You're technically shifting to use carbohydrates a little bit more, and then you're going back to sleep again.
Yeah.
And if you look at some sleep studies on people, that amount of fracturing of sleep is not really that unheard of. So I would say it's a little bit out there, but it's definitely possible.
Well, if you look
sleep
at,
is a big one too.
I think sleep apnea, for example,
sleep apnea is huge.
Underdiagnosed. And so it's basically that same thing. It's the alarm clock going off because you stop breathing. And that's multiple times per hour. And, I just met with a sleep specialist who found that I have mild to moderate sleep apnea.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm very fit. I exercise a lot. I lift weights. And that's what I got. Now, I broke my nose a load of times playing rugby. I've got some structural issues going on. But don't think of this as the condition of the obese or the type 2 diabetic or somebody that is deconditioned. Lots of people, certainly NFL athletes, NHL athletes, deal with this. So I think that's a really key lesson here is make sure your sleep architecture can remain intact. We don't get those interruptions. And if you're not feeling rested, this is another great reason to get that checked out.
Yeah, and it is becoming easier to get done with technology now. You don't always necessarily have to go in and do a sleep study. If you can get it done, that's great. But there's plenty of options now that we didn't have before.
I got a home device just sat on my thumb. It wasn't even like a
like a watch
strap
pad
all the
type setup.
electrodes on, which I've done, but this was a super easy thing that they can monitor blood oxygen levels, and they, you just see mine dipping at these various points through the night. And so lots of ways to diagnose, lots of ways to treat it that are relatively simple.
Yeah. It's quick story on that. I had a client years ago. We're looking at her blood work. We could not figure out what was going on. Her hematocrit was super high. Everything was all squirrely. Recovery was crap, but her performance output was pretty good. She's a volunteer firefighter. So I sent it to my buddy, Dr. Tommy Wood, and I'm like, I didn't tell him anything about it. I said, hey, what do you think's going on here? He writes back, is he a cyclist doing EPO?
Yeah.
Like her hematocrit was just off the charts.
Yeah.
And it took a while for us to figure it out. And then we had her do like a watch pat, like an at-home sleep test thing, and massive sleep apnea. We're like, oh, she's becoming so hypoxic at night. Not only is that a massive stressor to her body, but it's building up more red blood cells and everything else because she's becoming so hypoxic at night.
Yeah. See, that's something in the blood work that often gets sort of passed off. Hemoglobin levels, like hematocrit. I just reviewed a case last week where the individual was super high in both of those. And it is a really interesting marker for someone who's dealing with some other metabolic stuff, increasing the viscosity of the blood and all the rest of it. It's really interesting how that links into the sleep piece.
Yeah. And as you know, like high blood viscosity can be multiple different things, but when you've ruled out everything else, then it's like, let's try to look at your sleep a little bit. Worst case scenario, like I always think of it as like rule in or rule out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, everything was fine. Like the sleep doc says you're good to go. Okay, great. That wasn't it. Let's look at the other options. But
next up.
It's amazing how often that flag is just missed entirely.
Right. And we've skirted around the topic of stress a little bit. You've mentioned it a couple of times here. Let's dig into that, because there's a lot of high performers who listen to the show. Not necessarily athletes, but high performers in different industries. Talk about the chronic stress levels that somebody might encounter who's a non-athlete, might be sitting at a desk or just in a highly stressful job.
I use HRV a lot, which is now trendy. And for years when I first started looking at it, was just a simple marker of stress on your autonomic nervous system. I initially only did it in athletes once I could get a wearable at home to do it and wasn't outside the lab. And then I'm like, I should just start doing it on everyone because I just want more practice looking at the data. And what I found was, in a perfect world, an athlete, their main stressor is actually, hopefully, their training and their sport. It's not always true, but hopefully that's what we want to get to. And we can adjust that and do whatever we need to. Most other people, it's usually not always necessarily their training, although it can be. It's normally their other lifestyle stressors that they have going on. And the hardest part is that a lot of that is very unconscious. Like I remember doing a call with a potential client years ago, not even video, just talking to her. And she's like, oh, I'm not stressed at all. My stress level is really, really low. My stress is just almost non-existent. I'm like, you sound like you're stressed out of your freaking mind. Like you can't even hold a conversation without taking a breath or the short pauses. And then you hear the big inhales and all sorts of weird breathing patterns. And and it's weird that it's a very unconscious thing. So I like using some marker, to see what's going on, and that allows you to change stuff. And the thing that I think that gets missed is I view it as like the two-pronged approach of one, okay, let's find what the things for your physiology are your top stressors, which is not the same for everyone. There are things we agree upon can be stressors, but different psychological stressors will be completely different for some people versus the next. Even stuff like sleep and nutrition. And I've seen some high performers have absolute dog crap nutrition and be semi-okay. Now, did they do better when we changed it? Yes. But not as much as I would have thought. So you have your two-pronged approach. Like you have your general stressors we're going to look at. And then the issue with high performers that most people never talk about is once you air quote fix their stressors, they just find more stressors. Like that's what they do. That's literally how they're wired. So you also have to increase their capacity to handle more stress. And that's a component that I think most people miss. So the analogy I give clients all the time is if I have my little mug here and this is your body's capacity, if you've got a bunch of holes in the mug, like it doesn't matter. We're not going to be able to fill it with a lot of water. So yes, fix your sleep. Maybe you need a sleep device, whatever. Let's fix your nutrition. Let's check your breathing patterns. Let's, do some intelligent training, not, pound yourself into the dirt every time because you love CrossFit or now High Rocks or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are great sports. Like I train athletes in both of those, but let's modify it a little bit, etc. But then let's also, as we're doing that, if we can, let's try to make the size of your cup actually bigger so that you can actually handle more stressors. Because I know exactly what's going to happen once we fix these issues is you're going to find another stressor or another job, or you want to work and take over another company or whatever it is.
Right.
And you're going to be not happy with your current capacity of where you're at. You'll feel better. You'll be great for like 4 to 6 weeks. You'll be like, this is amazing. And then you'll be like, hey, well, I added this and I'm going to do this and do that. And that's just the way that it goes. So we have to increase your capacity also at the same time.
And so I'd like to talk a little bit then about the solutions here. What do we do about it? So we've gone through some of the dietary stuff we can look at, and we've talked about sleep and stress. What about exercise? All right, how is exercise impactful in improving our metabolic flexibility?
It's super impactful. I mean, if I were to pick only one thing, which again is a weird theoretical question, which is not applicable, and I could wave my magic wand and fix anything. And let's say they're getting like a C in everything, right? So they're not absolutely horrible in one thing. They're not sleeping 3 hours a night or something like that. But, they're about the average American. I would actually fix all their movement patterns and do more movement actually above everything else, as much as I'm known for doing nutrition, metabolism, all that kind of stuff. Because I've seen time and time again, if people get the movement component right, it's like your little, like your trump card. Like you can get a lot of other crap wrong and do pretty good. Like, high level athletes are a pretty good example of this. Like they do a lot of movement, they do intentional movement, they tend to be pretty fit, they tend to be pretty strong. And you'll see like some of the worst nutritional habits you've ever seen. NBA guys like playing on Twitter till 4 a.m, like the craziest shit you've ever seen, and then go out and play the next day and, for a short period of time, do pretty good, which is crazy. Again, it's hard to say you can't compare the freaks to everybody else, but I've taken a fair amount of just average general population and increased their movement quality, done all that stuff, and they've done pretty good, because a lot of the general population, the thing that they want to do that they'll never tell you outright. I have only one client actually tell me this outright in 20 plus years, is he literally came in and he's like, all right, I'll do whatever you tell me to do Monday through Friday. I don't want to do shit on the weekend, and I want to eat whatever the hell I want, and I want to drink beer on Friday night. But I'm like, okay, like you realize that you're going to have to do a lot of stuff to compensate for that. He's like, done. Right. Like, okay. But at least he's honest about what his goals are.
It's really funny because I often hear that statement you made that I'll do anything you tell me to do. You just tell me what to do. I'll say, well, let's start with 8 hours of sleep.
Screw off.
I can't do that, And then we go down the list of all the things they can't and won't do, right? So it's funny. And I think the exercise piece, it's interesting because we're coming up to 80 shows, and every expert that we've had on has essentially emphasized the movement component of just about anything we could be talking about. That movement is the key to unlocking the body's potential from a longevity standpoint, from a performance standpoint, and all of the other things stack on top of that. But it's just becoming more and more clear, the more experts we talk to, that getting that piece right is really the foundational element of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's completely multifactorial. Like, I mean, if you want to talk about reduction you want to look at all-cause mortality, right? So increase in your body's ability to live as long as possible. You can argue about quality of life or whatever. Your VO2 max, aerobic training, probably at the top of the list. Like we mentioned, grip strength is probably proxy for overall strength, lower body strength, muscle mass. Even reduction in risk of neurologic diseases. Like my good buddy, Dr. Tommy Wood, has a whole book on that, The Stimulated Mind, like doing complex motor tasks, learning to do new movements, sports, hobbies. I'm a big fan of go learn a new hobby, ideally in an unpredictable environment with direct feedback. So obviously I like kiteboarding. I know if I landed the jump or not. I know if I screwed up and ate shit or not. But hell, play pickleball, play tennis, like do something where you are not in an exact same environment all the time, or you have to deal with different implements, that type of thing. But yeah, movement, it just fixes so many things, reduction in risk of cancer, massive reductions in obesity, type 2 diabetics, just everything across the board.
Yeah. And so what, if I'm looking to start out and improve my metabolic flexibility, where should I start? What different modalities should I be participating in?
The thing I use for that is something I call just coaching leverage. And it's the physiologic response times the client's ability to change. Because like your sleep one is a great one. So when I started out, I was like probably into this, looking at sleep stuff probably 12 years ago. I'm blanking on the author's name of a book, but she wrote a book basically saying that we don't sleep much and our tolerance to carbohydrates has gone to shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that was like 15 years ago. The first time I heard that, I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. And so I'm like, oh, I got to get people to sleep more. Like, oh my God, they only sleep 6 hours a night. This is crazy. And after about a couple months of doing that, I wanted to pound my head through a wall because even now we've got tons of data showing physiologic responses to sleep are massive for everything. But at the end of the day, it comes back to a value sort of judgment on the person where they're not going to quit their job, not going to put their kids up for adoption. They're not going to stop doing anything. And they're like, oh, so you're telling me the 2 hours I watch Netflix at night with my wife, I can't do that and I'm supposed to go to bed.
Right.
Yeah, kind of. Like we can only optimize your sleep environment so much if you're getting 5 hours of sleep a night.
Right.
So high physiologic response, client ability to change is like dog crap.
Yeah.
But protein, super high physiologic response. And usually you tell people who want to lose weight, hey, do you know if you eat more protein, you can lose weight? Like, what are you talking about? Like I can eat more of something and lose weight? This is insane.
Yeah.
You know, takes a little bit of education, but their ability to do it is much higher. So I kind of run it through that metric of what is the things that are physiologically moving the needle, because no one wants to do something and realize it didn't make hardly any darn effect at all. But they want to do things that they can actually do. And that was the biggest thing I wish someone told me years ago as a trainer was that, you know what, if you've got multiple things that physiologically move the needle, it's okay to rig the system in your client's favor. It's perfectly okay. And it's actually better to give them the thing they're more likely to do. I know it sounds like so incredibly obvious. And so I just run through a list. I got a guy now and I just like, hey, here's our top 5 items. You rate 1 through 10 how likely you are to do these top 5, because we got plenty of things to pick from, but I've narrowed it down to these. And I'm going to pick the one that he's like, yeah, I can definitely do this. Nope, not doing that. Perfect. Let's start with that.
Yeah. That the other thing that everybody has said is that it's consistency.
Oh, by far. And then you have to do the thing consistently, what I call violent consistency.
And if you choose something you like and are able to put into your life, you will do it consistently.
Yes.
Right. If I pick, all right, sleep, highest leverage, or lifting weights, high leverage, hate it, don't have time for it, I'll do it once really, really intensely. Right. I'll clear the decks and I'll get 9 hours of sleep one night. That's it. But I'll go back to the walking thing. You know, people undervalue the incidental movement during the day or going out for a walk because it's so low intensity. But if you do that consistently, if you take walks after meals, if you can move more during the day and you do that for a long period of time, it has a huge impact.
Yeah. I mean, I could make an argument if your only goal is body composition, I would actually make an argument that walking is probably the best form of movement, right? Because you don't need formal instruction. You don't need special equipment. You don't need anything else. Like you will burn a fair amount of calories just by walking. Like I think everybody overestimates how many calories they burn from weight training and cardiovascular training. And yes, you should do both of those things, 100%. But from a pure, just, I don't give a crap about my health. I don't care about adaptations. I just want to get leaner. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of walking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's something that I want to emphasize and leave people with. It's improving the body's capacity, improving our fitness, increasing the amount of blood flow through this exercise. I think it does just build out more of these systems to give us the resilience and the robustness to be able to switch between these different fuel sources.
Yeah, and I think that's, especially with cardio, it seems like people were told, oh, cardio just to burn calories. It's like, even for my physique clients, like in the off season, we're pushing cardio to get an actually better cardiovascular response. Like we want, within reason, a higher VO2 max, because when they have a lot of stress and they're hypocaloric and they're trying to look good and, naked in their underwear on stage, they have the ability to handle more stress because we've built in that capacity. And so it kind of annoys me that it's getting better now. There's more emphasis on VO2 max and things like that. But it's the same idea with weight training. Like people don't necessarily think of weight training to burn calories or thinking about getting stronger or adding muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing when you do cardiovascular. We want those positive adaptations. And yes, you do burn some calories, which is good. We want to set the program up so you're burning calories and you're seeing the adaptations that we want, unless it's for just a highly specialized case.
Yeah. And with this individual that I was talking about earlier with the case review I did, that's exactly the message I gave was, we're going to start you with some cardio, but don't view it as calorie burning.
Yeah.
Just view it as we're trying to target this metabolic situation you've got going on, right? You're insulin resistant, you've got super high triglycerides and all these other things. We're trying to impact that. We're not doing this for weight loss, right? This is a metabolic intervention. Think of weight loss as the byproduct of all of this stuff we'll do. Like, let's not think about it as the primary target. Like, let's put the fire out first.
Yeah, and there's a separate subtopic, but the body's just, everybody seems to operate at a higher flux rate. So in a perfect world, if you can bring in more calories and burn more calories, like almost everything up to a point just works so much better. I just see so many people, like women have been told like it's only 1,200 calories. Guys have been told it's only 1,800 calories. And so they're trying to exist on these low caloric numbers. And the first thing I look at that is like, we need to just increase your calories. Like you're going to have to do more movement, have to fix your sleep, get some blood work. But our goal is to actually move you up. And even if you just stay weight neutral, totally fine with that. I'd rather you be weight neutral at 2,700 calories than your 1,800 you're at right now. I guarantee you'll be much more healthy. Your body will be more responsive. So when we do pull calories back out, they're like, oh my God, I'm actually losing weight now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah. Right. That's how that works.
Shocker.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground in a pretty short amount of time here, Mike. If you had to give people 3 things to take away from today's episode, what would they be?
Number 1 would be just rig the system in your favor. I mean, general population have so many places they can start. Like just start. Like if it's just doing an AM walk, do that. Like if I had to pick one intervention for most people, for general population, that will actually move the needle, that makes a difference, is as soon as you get out of bed, just do a short walk. It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, whatever you can do. You get better sunlight regulation, better circadian rhythms, you get some movement. You're doing movement usually in a low insulin environment because you haven't eaten anything yet. It's easy. Just put your shoes on, walk out the door. So that'd probably be number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2 would be, in terms of ease, would actually be higher protein, which I know there's going to be a high protein backlash coming because almost everything is high protein now. It's like, no, you don't need the high protein Snickers bar. Like, how about you actually learn how to grill or make actual proteins?
Yeah.
Like not peanut butter, like, dead animals or things of that nature. Depends all the vegans. But, and number 3 is some type of formal exercise where you're watching your output. If you want to start with cardiovascular training, great. If you want to start with weightlifting, great. Don't care. but watch the output. So if you're lifting, how much load did you do? How often did you do it? What were your sets? What were your reps? Like just literally physically, how much work did you do? I don't care about distance or whatever. It's going to be the same for you compared to you. For cardiovascular stuff, what is your output? Like, I did 6 minutes on the rower and I went 1,550 meters. Great. Yeah. Okay, that's an output. Doesn't have to be heart rate or anything like that. And then over time, just do a little bit more output.
Right.
Lift a little bit heavier, add another day, add another set, push volume a little bit. Doesn't have to be crazy. Same thing with cardiovascular. You can increase frequency or output. Over time, you're just literally getting more formal movement. So you get the benefit of the movement. And if you do it in an intelligent manner, you get the adaptations that we want from it chronically also.
Yeah. Those are amazing, mate. And for people who want to learn more about this, you have a whole certification on metabolic flexibility, right?
Yep. So it's called the Flex Diet Certification. It's based on metabolic flexibility and flexible dieting. We took the 8 interventions, everything from, fats, carbohydrates, protein, micronutrition, NEAT, sleep, etc. And then we just rank them 1 through 8. So you start with what the highest, coaching leverage is, and then go all the way through 8. And there's for trainers, there's a little hour that tells you about all the technical stuff. And then each one has 5 interventions. So I tell you explicitly, okay, here's what this would look like for protein. Maybe it's 4 meals at 40 grams of protein each day. All right. So you'll know the big picture, you'll know the research, you'll know all of the technical stuff, and then you'll know exactly what you need to do and how to apply it. And right now we've had probably 60% trainers and coaches, and surprisingly, like 40% just fitness enthusiasts who want to learn more and want to learn how to do it themselves, which has been super interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, what a great resource for people. And outside of that, where can people find you?
So the best place is the website, which is MikeTNelson.com. Most of the content I go is out to the Insider private newsletter. So you can just go up there, and I think we've got a cool protein gift for you. And then we've got some stuff on Instagram. So Dr. Mike T. Nelson. And then we have the Flex Diet podcast, which you've also been on. So if they want a podcast, they'll be able to listen to that also.
Awesome. Well, Mike, the Instagram, I like the walk and talks on the Instagram.
Thank you.
Great little lessons. I always take something away from those. And, I thank you again for your time and wisdom on this topic, mate. It's going to be great for people.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was great.
Here are your 3 key things to take away from today's episode. Number 1, start tomorrow with a morning walk. Before you eat, before you check your phone, get outside and move. It costs you nothing and the returns will compound. Number 2, look honestly at your protein intake and where it's actually coming from. Real cooked protein from whole food sources. That's what moves the needle. Number 3, if you're exercising, start tracking your output, not just showing up and doing the work. Look at what load you lift. How far did you row? What did you actually do during your session? That's the number that you can measure and improve over time. Remember, your body is built to use fat and carbohydrates. Training that capacity and protecting it with sleep, managing your stress, and moving consistently is the metabolic foundation that everything else sits upon. Before we wrap today, we want to share a quick update. Over the past 76 episodes, we've had the opportunity to learn from some incredible experts and share those conversations with you. As we head into this seasonal break, we're also entering a new chapter for Vitality Collective. We'll be taking some time to focus on several important new opportunities and initiatives that are happening behind the scenes. In performance, growth doesn't happen through constant output. It happens through intentional cycles of effort, recovery, and adaptation. We believe the same is true for creative work. When we return this fall, we'll continue doing what we've always done, bringing you thoughtful conversations with experts and translating high-performance principles into practical strategies for everyday life. Michelle and I are incredibly grateful for your support and for being a part of this community. Be sure to follow and subscribe so that you don't miss what's next. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support the show is to follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts and leave a rating or a review. It makes a real difference in helping us reach more people who could benefit from these conversations. You can stay connected with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Vitality Collective Performance, where we share additional insights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates on upcoming episodes. The information shared in this episode is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your training, recovery, or health practices. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.